Yes.
Good
Hello.
evening.
That was nicely synchronized.
Good evening, stroke afternoon, stroke other point in your day, which we hope is going really well.
Yes, although it should actually be before noon for some Americans on the West Coast.
Oh, can't even think about before noon at this point.
No, you can't. Hi, I'm Malcolm F. Cross, and this is Alice Dryden.
Yes, that is who I am.
Did I steal your opportunity to say your own name?
This is Alice Husky-Tear Dryden.
You see, perfect BBC enunciation. We are both here because we are lucky enough to have been supported by you, the consumer, in awards such as the Ursa Major Award and the Coyotl. This is obviously of great glee to the both of us. We are both immensely thankful and
gleeful.
And gleeful.
Very gleeful. Lots of glee here.
And humbled by your support. So to celebrate this, we thought that we should do readings from our nominated works. Is there anything we should discuss about the nominated works beforehand?
Well, you have been nominated in the Best Novel
category.
I have. For Dog Country.
For Dog Country, which let's see if we can get the cover up for that, because I cunningly set this up earlier. That's Gone with Fur, which is...
which will be coming to you later.
Which will be coming to you later, which is Alice's work. And that should switch any moment now. There we go. And that's
seamless.
That's the cover to Dog Country, my debut novel, which I'll be reading from shortly. Just as a little bit of background, you can see that the main character there, who's just vanished conveniently, is one of the genetically engineered super soldier dogs who were emancipated at a very young age, meaning that they were no longer able to go out and fight wars because they were forced to be regular little old children. And in the section I'm going to be reading today, it is a part of a flashback narrative, which is following the main character. And I actually stole a piece out of Ian M. Banks's Use of Weapons, where he had two narratives moving in opposite directions. So one had all the chapters going backwards, and the other one had the chapters going forwards, and they sort of met in the middle. And it had a very interesting kind of reveal about the whole thing, and I totally nicked that. And I'm going to be reading from the first part of the backwards narrative. So this is sort of from near the end of the book, but it's actually chronologically one of the first things that happens. Shall we move me more to the center?
Yes, hope so.
There we go.
I might be able to reach my coffee if you do that.
Then you can reach your coffee. Okay. So from my novel, Dog Country. 1. Leaving. Sounding address, Middle American Corporate Preserve, January 2104, Edane Estienne. His plane wasn't there yet, but Edane didn't have anywhere else to go. The passenger waiting area in the airport was all white tiles and gloss, and potted plants with small white squares of smart paper hanging from them, explaining what brand they were and how they helped filter the air and detect contaminants. The air conditioning was on too hard, a blast of cold air being sucked through the balcony cafe's open doors and out into the pre-dawn heat, even though the balcony cafe wouldn't be open for another 4 hours. The planes huddled under the terminal's crosswalks, some big, some small, all of them dark and unlit. No life around them except for a couple of workers watching as trolley trains loaded the planes up with commercial cargo. Edane tracked the motions with his nose, while on a skywalk, service crews and flight engineers boarded a plane with a black and gold tail logo. So if anybody on the flight wanted a drink or the plane software had to be updated or something, there'd be a person to do it. It'd be sunrise soon. Grandpa Jeff was dead. Grandpa Jeff had left Edane money, but no instructions. And Edane was trying at college. He'd really tried, but it was all so depressing. It was high school all over again. People trying to teach him how to be anything but who he was. Trying to teach him that meaningless things had meaning. That owning one kind of car instead of a different kind of car made a real difference over using the public transit trams and buses, or getting a discount long-term use account with a cab company. As if every other person in college was born with the desire for a family, a job, an expensive pair of sunglasses. He didn't understand, and he didn't want to understand. The PMC K-level certification had been a 1-week course, and it all meant something. What laws to follow, what a combatant was defined as, what kinds of orders were legal and what kinds weren't, what was good and what was bad. It wasn't just a movie he had to live beside, watching every day, full of people, human people who didn't look like him, being fulfilled by things he could never understand, but things he'd be judged for all the same. Pretending that good was white fluffy clouds and bad was black spiky plastic. The licensing course was real, and it had diagrams and standard operating procedures and coded citation references. Even Grandpa Jeff would have understood that the PMC K-level certification was important, more important than college. He would have listened. He would have been sore about it, but he would have listened at least. Kathy and Beth hadn't listened. They'd told Dane he was throwing his life away, that he was giving in to preconceived notions about what he was, that he was limiting all of his options, that he was making them unhappy. Dane didn't want to make his mothers unhappy, but he didn't want to be unhappy either. He pulled the suitcase he'd taken from the apartment's closet out from under his seat again and set it on his lap and looked inside. His passport was still there. His registration documents and employment contract from the Tajik Republic's Private Military Contractors Liaison Office were still there, safe burnt into a few sheets of smart paper. His ID was still there. The plastic sealed bag containing a wad of Simone bills to spend in Tajikistan was still there. His pad was still there, and so was the black, stretchy hairband one of his mothers had accidentally forgotten to take out of the suitcase after unpacking last vacation, almost invisible against the lining. Everything still there, even if he had to rearrange it all because the case was so empty that his things rattled around inside. A smaller case would have been better, except the flight ticket to Tajikistan had specified the dimensions of carry-on luggage very clearly, and he didn't have enough to fill a suitcase that big. Dane could have packed more clothes, but then, when he came back, the clothes might have to be delayed in quarantine. If he came back. He didn't know whether or not he'd want to. He hadn't been a soldier before. Not properly. He'd been in the barracks before the emancipation, but that didn't count. He'd never actually fought anybody. And Grandpa Jeff had always been very firm, saying that war was a bad thing, but that didn't mean Dane was bad. Dane had been made to be a soldier, and he wasn't one. Because it was bad to be a soldier. It was good to be an office admin, or a lawyer, or a business manager. Dane wasn't any of those things, and he wasn't a soldier either. He wasn't anything. He didn't know what he was, except that nobody wanted him to be it. He carefully took the hairband out of the suitcase and looked at it. It could have been Kathy's, it could have been Beth's. It smelled a little bit like honeysuckle underneath the car door closet's mustiness, but Kathy and Beth went through different phases of using different smells for their shampoo, and he couldn't remember which of them had been using that kind of shampoo during the last vacation they took. He just remembered the both of them slipping bands like the one in his palm over their wrist, holding back their hair, and tugging the band over and around their hair into neat ponytails, so they could run after him on the beach in Portobello without getting their hair messed up by the wind. Dane slipped the hairband over his wrist with the same flex of the fingers his mother's had used. It sat black on his reddish fur. The more he rolled it back and forth, the closer it got to his skin, vanishing under the hairs. At last, he couldn't even see it, just feel it around his wrist. It pinched a little as he waited for his plane to arrive. The sensation faded, until the only way he knew it was there was if he checked, scratching at his wrist. Being a soldier was important. It was the only important thing. Nobody else understood that. They all thought there were other things, but Dane knew different. Dane knew he'd been White 6, and that once he'd had a place in the world, carrying the Lamwa, the light anti-materiel weapon. It had been a long time, but he hadn't forgotten the weight of it, even if he had a little trouble remembering the words. He'd been White 6, part of White Pack, Fire Team 1, partnered with White 5. Back then, he'd known what he was for, and what he was supposed to be, and nobody had ever told him that he wasn't who he thought he was. Nervously, Dane picked at the hairband around his right wrist, scratching into his fur just to feel the soft flex of it under his clawish fingernail. He was going to Tajikistan. He was going to be a soldier. He wasn't a child anymore. He was a man, an adult. He just had to wait a little bit longer for his plane to get there, and then everything would be better. He'd find out who he was. The Dane waited, though he wasn't sure for what. He scratched at his wrist again, just to check for the hairband. The Dane kept waiting. Sunrise was coming. And that is the first chronological thing that happens in the book, although it appears very late.
That filled me with all kinds of feelings.
Did it?
Yes.
Well, I appreciate that. The whole point of writing is to fill people with feelings. I'm going to take a couple of questions, if people can provide questions really, really quick, on the chat, and then we'll pass over to you. Do you happen to have any questions?
I actually haven't, because I've read the book. I feel I'm quite on top of this.
You feel quite on top of it because you've read the book. Thank you for reading. She helped read it when it was still a very early book, long ago, when it had large portions that had yet to be removed. So, let's take a quick look at the live chat. Let me just switch windows on this lovely device, which we are working on. And no questions as of yet. Okay, well then we will leave questions until after all the readings. So remember, questions after the readings. Questions after the readings. Not reasons, readings. Reading. Okay, so your work
over to me
is 400 rabbits. Oh, don't you need a hat? You promised you'd bring a strange and different hat.
Well, actually, Foosball has lent me yet another hat from his extensive hat collection. Here we go.
What a fine looking hat.
Oh, I'm rocking the Barrow Boy look.
Mm. Do you have anything to tell us about 400 rabbits and where it came from?
Yes. 400 Rabbits, which is a nominee in the short fiction section of the Ursa Majors, is published in Gods with Fur.
You can buy it and link down there.
Yeah, it's a Fred Patten edited anthology, and it's about animal deities of various kinds. Some from religions like ancient Egyptian, Aztec, Roman, some furry gods from furry worlds. It's a very varied anthology, got some good names writing for it. Kyle Gold, Watts Martin, Mary Loud, apparently me.
Apparently you.
Yeah,
I really did like that story. Tell them about 400 Rabbits, the pizza place.
Yes, 400 Rabbits is the name of a pizza restaurant where Foosball and I have eaten pizza on more than one occasion. It's very good. And on the back of their menu, they explain that Aztec mythology had 400 drunken rabbit gods, who are the gods of partying. And I knew immediately that this was a brilliant theme for a short story. So I'm going to read part of 400 Rabbits, which is the tale of what happens when one of the drunken rabbit gods decides to find out whether there's perhaps more to life than a constant cycle of partying and hangovers. It also only dawned on me minutes before we kicked off that this story is full of polysyllabic words which I copied from Wikipedia and have no idea how to pronounce. So for any Aztecs who might be watching this, I do apologise. I'm going to mangle your lovely words. Anyone else, shut up, you don't know. 400 Rabbits. 86 Rabbit woke up with a hangover. As far as he could remember, he had woken up with a hangover every morning since he and his 399 siblings, the Chenson Tetochtin, were born of the union between Coyotl, god of fermentation, and Maya Hoel, goddess of alcohol. It didn't seem to be getting any more enjoyable. He wobbled his nose, sending ripples of pain across his skull like wind through a field of maize, and lolloped unsteadily over to the big obsidian mirror. His eyes might have been 2 beads of dried blood. The skin inside his ears was pale, and when he poked out his tongue, it was frosted with white. "This has got to stop," he said to himself. "Hey, keep the noise down!" 323 Rabbit staggered into the burrow, still clutching an empty bottle which had at some stage contained pulque. "What a night, huh? That was one amazing party, wasn't it?" Was it? 86 Rabbit eyeballed his brother. Late born and late numbered, 323 was ranked among the lowest in seniority of the 400 sibling gods. The real big Kazos, 12 Rabbit and upwards, wouldn't even have given him the time of day. He had a nerve telling 86 to keep it down. "What was so great about it?" 86 asked. "Tell me one thing." One of 323's ears drooped. He pushed it upright with a paw, only for the other to flop down over his eyes. "Oh, well, there was... How about..." He scratched his whiskers. "Actually, 8C, I can't remember the first thing about it. And that's what made it so amazing," he finished triumphantly. "Don't you ever want to do something different with your evenings? And don't call me 8C. "Different?" 323's eyes bugged out as he thought. "Like drinking mezcal instead of pulque?" "No, I mean like dancing, playing rubber ball, going to watch a human sacrifice. We could even just stay in and talk. When was the last time two of us had a conversation that wasn't about who took the last aspirin?" "But what about our duties?" Each of the rabbit siblings was in charge of a particular aspect of drunkenness. 86 was the god of attempting to chat up your best friend's betrothed. His favourite sister, 55, was the goddess of attempting to chat up your best friend. 323, being a more junior rabbit, was responsible for the inability to tie your shoelaces. Since shoelaces would not come to Mesoamerica for another 300 years, he was frequently at a loose end. We don't all need to be at every single party all the time. I'm pretty sure a few of us could take the night off every now and then. 86 became uncomfortably aware that 323 was wearing the expression of someone who has opened a bottle of pulque, only for the god Coyotl to fly out of it in the form of a winged serpent. I just think there might be more to life than getting drunk," he concluded. "More to life than..." 323's eyes bulged and he clapped a paw over his mouth. 86 thought he was probably going to be sick, but instead he went herring out of the burrow and down the warren, tripping over his paws and crashing into walls as he tried to hop and thump his hind foot for danger at the same time. Two rabbit! Two rabbit! He yelled. "Come quick! 86 Rabbit has lost his mind!" Two Rabbit was the leader of the siblings, and on the frequent occasions when their parents were busy with other affairs of fermentation and alcohol, represented their ultimate authority. None of the 399 had ever seen one rabbit. Legend had it that the moment he was birthed he had embarked upon a binge of such divine proportions that his corporeal elements had fractured across space and time, allowing him simultaneously to attend every party since the age of the jaguar sun, as well as those yet to come. This bending of the laws of the universe was thought to be the origin of the term bender. "This had better be good," Two Rabbit pronounced, glaring at 86, 323, and sundry brothers and sisters who had popped out of their burrows to see what was going on. "I'm trying to draw up the duty roster for the party. Coyotl, goddess of sexual misdeeds and their forgiveness. Genuine Aztec goddess, by the way, Wikipedia, is holding tonight." That was a top gig. The rabbits drew themselves up, trying to look alert, bright-eyed, and ready to party. Not easy when the effects of the last party are still draining from your system. "I'm just saying," 86 swallowed. "I know we do important work, helping people relax, enjoy themselves, and make stupid, regrettable decisions. But we've been doing it since we were born, and frankly, it's getting a bit dull. Tiring, too. I'm sure we'd all be better for a night off every once in a while. Maybe stay in and read a good codex. The humans have invented this stuff called cocoa. It's quite nice, apparently." Two Rabbit's bloodshot eyes looked him disapprovingly up and down, and 86 trembled. 86 Rabbit, you are a deity. An anthropomorphic personification of drunkenness, no less. Anthropomorphic personifications of drunkenness don't get bored. We don't get tired. And we don't put our feet up with a mug of hot mashed beans when we could be out partying. Her glare swept the assembled rabbits, daring them to disagree. Am I right? There were hasty cheers. Paws punched the air. Party! 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 With a twitch of her ears, Two Rabbits silenced the chant. 86 Rabbit, I am disappointed in you, she said. This is not the behaviour I expect from a rabbit of double figures. 86 waited to see what punishment would be meted out. He had heard that 2 Rabbit could demote her siblings to more menial jobs, though it hadn't happened for centuries. He didn't fancy being the divine personification of slamming your finger in the taxi door, or of why not make it a vindaloo instead of a madras. Since you think so little of our sacred customs, 2 Rabbit continued, you are welcome to try this crazy notion of sobriety. But you will try it away from here, so none of your brothers and sisters attempt to follow your example. Depart, now, and return when you have learned some sense. 86 hopped slowly up the warren, and into the world above, his white tail bouncing as he went. His sibling gods watched him go with twitching noses and quivering whiskers, but nobody said a word. Only 323 mouthed something that could have been sorry.
Poor 86.
Poor little guy, yes.
Is 86 getting 86th?
He is. That is exactly why he's called 86.
You do such brilliant jokes. You know that.
You. Well, they're mostly puns, which are about drunken rabbits, which is a very serious subject.
It is quite a serious subject. So there's a question here, which is, why does the main character have multiple mothers? And that would be for mine. In the book, these emancipated war dogs, let's see if we can get a picture of the cover again. Doop. Come on, cover, do the magic. Okay,
Hey.
First time. That guy there, he was emancipated from sort of clone barracks as a kid. And society in general sort of said, no, we don't like this idea that we're going to clone people and redesign them to be soldiers. No, we're going to try and make them into like regular little kids. So a very nice lesbian couple, Kathy and Beth, wound up adopting a Dane when he was 7 years old. And he'd been in boot camp for 4 years. So he was quite a handful as a kid.
Yes, I mean, although your dogs are child age when they come out into the world, really they are adult soldiers in many respects.
Yeah, I mean, the whole, I mean, there's another scene in Dog Country where one of the dogs comments, it's weird that we remember so much out of our childhood. And the other one points out, you know, if human beings forget their childhood, they don't lose sale value. So they were sort of very much designed and imprinted and trained as kids. It was quite a nasty thing to have imagined. Okay, we have a question for you, which is, which god is the god of hangovers? And why don't they punch that rabbit until his ears fall off?
That's a brilliant question. I'm not sure that they had one. I don't think the Aztecs thought that far ahead, which could explain a lot about them, including the fall of their civilization. They just didn't think beyond the parties.
And, you know, if they'd understood hangovers, they might have understood the fall of it. Oh, it's very plausible. Let's see what else we got. Puns are the best. Do I plan on advancing with the timeline on my books beyond the end of Dog Country? Dog Country takes place arguably between 2104 and 2106, and I have vague plans for stuff that's happening up to about 2107, 2108, but I'm not sure what I'm going to do with all that. There's material that Alice has seen that sort of goes into some of the genetic engineering-y stuff, and that sort of takes place around the same time as Dog Country, which is when Troy has his problems with his professor, who basically tries to... Troy is a lab mouse who was used in experimentations, and he wound up going...
I do hope that the stuff that I have read finds a story to hang itself on and comes out into the world, because it's really great.
Thank you. So yeah, he's a lab mouse. He then gets emancipated, and he goes to college, and he has major problems with his professor as he tries to get his PhD. And that might be happening at some point. And I think that just about covers it.
Well, I'm good here. I've vomited forth my drunken rabbits for your viewing pleasure. I'm very pleased with that. It's good evening's work.
And you're not even likely to get a hangover.
I feel a lot better having got the drunken rabbits out of my system, actually.
Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for hosting.
And congratulations on your nomination for the Ursa Major Award.
Likewise, dear boy, likewise.
Thank you so much, and we will see all of you at some other point.
On the flip side.
Mm-hmm.